Looks like we're live.
Good, you're live and you're on.
Okay. So unfortunately, we don't have a quorum tonight.
Announce the meeting and who's here.
Just myself and Mike Niles, and Renee is running the Zoom for Veronica, who is absent tonight. Nothing, we can just go over, introduce Mike. I don't know if anyone has met Mike before, been a member for how many years now, Mike?
Quite a while.
Yeah,
10, I
eight
think,
years or
10.
10 years. Okay, and he's in the service and has not been able to attend virtually, or being that this is our first meeting in person. This is also Mike's first meeting since the pandemic started. So I was alerted that Martha is on vacation. Pauline was unable to make it. Phil George is also on vacation, and Stan indicated that he would not be here tonight. Question for you, Renee, do you want me to just go over the agenda, even though we have no members, or how do we want to address
I would
this?
keep it short since there's nothing that's really going to be gained. Phil apparently is on virtually, but it doesn't count because the executive order allowing that is no longer in place.
Okay,
So,
Phil was going to do a presentation tonight.
oh, he was?
Yeah. And he was prepared to talk about it. So what we've, as a group.
I mean, this is not you don't have a quorum. I don't know what it would harm to allow him to be heard, but if I can figure out how to
To
get it.
let you know and let Mike know, and our group has decided to do each meeting a environmental education topic, if you will. So we get rambling on about this and that, and everybody has their expertise and they can share something with the group. So Phil had agreed to present this week. And now that we are not meeting virtually anymore, it's going to take people a little while, I think, to catch up to the idea. That was working out quite well, obviously. Things that we did have on the agenda tonight were the members. Beecher Graham has moved out of the town and has now moved to Madison County. And so she has sent in her resignation. So we will be looking for a replacement for Beecher. Jeff Barber is, as we understand it, he's off on personal issues. So he cannot participate right now. And therefore we are looking for replacements for those two people, I believe. We're going to reach out and coordinate with Jeff and make sure that that is the case. Spoke with his wife and she indicated that at least for now, he was not able to participate. So we'll look to within our group for ideas and suggestions as to who they think might be interested, if anyone. And we are open to suggestions and looking for at least 2 members at this point. Right, Renee?
Yeah, I think so.
The next, is it possible to get Phil in, or?
Okay,
Yes,
test my skills.
I think he would need to request control.
Phil, if you raise your hand, I think I can unmute you. I think, I'm not sure.
And Phil, can you hear us?
Well, until he.
You should be able to, right?
Go to participants and see if I can.
I'm not exactly sure how it works with Zoom, but you can request control or,
Well, let me see. Allowed to talk.
there you go. You're doing better than I am, Renee, without a
Well,
mouse. I like a mouse.
But it's not doing anything.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Uh,
Here we go. Phil?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
We did it.
Wonderful.
Good.
I have a blank screen now. I don't know what you see, but I have a blank screen.
We don't
It's-
see your face. Is that because?
I don't know. I don't see any, my screen, I was seeing all of you, but now I don't see anything. It's just a blank screen.
Are you on a phone doing this?
No, an iPad.
Huh.
But normally I see,
Yeah.
but that's okay. I'll just look at a blank screen.
I just want you to know, and I'm not going to take over this meeting because it's not my meeting, but that executive order that allowed us to have public meetings by Zoom only has not been extended, so we're not allowed to do it that way anymore.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Yes.
Yeah, I
okay.
know, that's fine. And so we've been holding since the beginning of July, all our meetings, planning board, town board, zoning, whatever, here in the town hall like we used to, but continuing to Zoom.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but as a board member, you can't participate, you can't be officially considered in attendance through Zoom anymore, unless you are in a public place where other people could see what's on your screen.
Oh, okay.
That's the current law. So, but I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Frank. I just wanted you to know that. That was why.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Renee.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So Phil, when we spoke earlier, you had said that you were prepared to.
I am. I mean, I just have some notes written down and stuff about, my favorite topic is pollinators. But, I can either talk tonight or I don't know if there's anybody else on Zoom, like from the community, but I can also wait till the next meeting when it's, I'm there in person. Either or is fine with me.
Why don't we do a practice run? Go
Okay,
ahead, you can educate whoever's listening, and it sounded like it was relatively short.
it is, yeah. it's
Maybe
one-
we can do it again next time for the whole group to see.
Okay, yep. And like I said, I didn't prepare a PowerPoint. Once I retired, I don't even use a computer anymore, so.
God bless you.
Good for you.
It's like, I've simplified my life. So, okay, so what I was gonna talk, I don't know, can you see me at all or not?
Let me see if I can figure out how to get you.
Oh, it doesn't matter because I'm not showing anything, so it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
all right. We can
Yeah.
see your name and we can hear you. That's,
Okay, that's all you.
I
that's all
wasn't-
you really-
I'm substituting for Veronica, and as far as I got is to know what to do. I did not realize I needed to let anybody be seen that was in the.
Did you turn your video on, Phil?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's all right because like I
Okay,
said,
yeah.
I don't have anything to show anyhow, so
Sure.
that's fine. So yeah, so what I was going to talk about was pollinator protection, and first I want to probably everybody knows what pollinators are, but just as a refresher, pollinators are animals that move pollen from one flower to another flower. That's pretty simple. And which that helps bring about fertilization of the plant and then produces seeds and fruits. So that's, pretty basic, pretty simple for pollinators. But there's over like 1,500 different types of pollinators. And some of the, common examples that we see, one of the ones that's near and dear to me are honeybees, because I keep honeybees, but
Nice.
also wild bees, wasps, moths, birds, bats, butterflies, even small mammals, beetles. So again, there's a lot of different pollinators out there, and they're really needed to pollinate our crops so that we have food to eat. And they pollinate a lot of vegetable and fruit crops, and it's estimated that they pollinate over 1,200 different types of crops, anything from apples and bananas and oranges to berries, blueberries, coffee, melons, squash, beans, almonds. In fact, most of the almonds that are grown in the United States and California, migratory beekeepers bring their honeybees to California to pollinate the honeybees, and then they pollinate the almonds, and then they move the honeybees to other places to pollinate other things. So, without the honeybees pollinating the almond crops in California, we really wouldn't have almonds like, so many as we do today. So the pollinators do pollinate a lot of crops, and there's a lot of different pollinators. So really the question is, what's the problem? What's the concern? Well, there's a number of things that are affecting pollinators, and they're affecting them negatively, and their overall population is in decline. So that's really the concern. So if the pollinators are decreasing, then you have less pollinators to pollinate fruit and vegetable crops and so on. So one of the pollinators I want to talk about wasn't honeybees. It was actually the monarch butterfly. And I think most people know what the monarch butterfly is. It's a pretty orange and black butterfly that's flying around now. It's got the wings that look like stained glass windows. So the pollinators, or the butterfly, the monarch butterfly, again, is a pollinator. And the ones that we see here at this time of year, or a little bit later, even August, September, these butterflies actually, and I think probably most people know this too, actually migrate to Mexico to overwinter in Mexico. And they overwinter in like central Mexico. So it's about a 3,000-mile journey. So it's a long ways. And these monarch butterflies are also in decline. And it was estimated like in the 1990s, there was like 400 to 600 million monarch butterflies that overwintered in Mexico. And today there's about 100 million monarch butterflies that overwinter in Mexico. And that number fluctuates a lot. I've looked at a lot of graphs, and one year it might be 200 million, the next year it might be 70 million, but it's definitely, the trend is it's in decline. That's the key thing. So, and there's a number of reasons for this too. And, and they're really varied, and there's some things we can do and some things we can't. So for example, one of the things that's happening is that the monarch butterflies are fairly particular on where they overwinter in Mexico. They want to be at a certain elevation, they want to be at a certain humidity, they want to be at a certain temperature, and there's certain trees that they want to overwinter on. Well, one of the problems is there's not a lot of this area in Mexico. It's in certain areas in central Mexico, and there's been illegal logging in those areas. And it doesn't really take a lot of trees to be cut down to affect the monarch butterflies, because hundreds of thousands of butterflies overwinter on a single tree. So, just cutting down 50 trees has a huge impact on how many monarch butterflies can overwinter. And if they can't find the right tree in the right elevation, then they have to continue flying until they find it. And if they don't find it, they become exhausted and potentially die. So that's one factor. Another reason is use of pesticides. When they're on their way to Mexico, they have to stop and, feed, and they feed on nectar. And if there's pesticides on the plants or whatever, and they ingest that pesticide, then again, the monarchs will potentially die. Monarchs also feed on or lay their eggs on milkweed, and that's really more of an impact on the way back, on their journey back up, rather than the way down. But nevertheless, if there's less milkweed, then there's less monarch butterflies. Weather conditions, whether it's drought or rainy or whatever, could affect the butterflies as well. So there's a lot of things that could affect the population of butterflies. It's not just one thing. So, but interesting, I find this interesting anyhow, is that the monarchs that, leave here in August, September to overwinter Mexico, they're flying, whatever it is, 3,000 or so miles to eventually get to Mexico to overwinter. Those monarch butterflies never make it back here. So what happens is in the spring, when it starts to, warm up here a little bit, the monarchs down in Mexico start their journey back up. But they don't go very far. They'll go maybe to, northern Mexico or the southern United States. The monarchs then will lay their eggs on the milkweed plant, and the monarch itself will die, and then the offspring will continue the journey. So, once they develop and are ready to fly, so they will fly, but they won't go again all the way up to New York. They will fly maybe to the southern United States, and they'll do the same process. They'll land on milkweed. They'll get to, at some point, they'll land on milkweed, lay their eggs, caterpillar will emerge, eat the milkweed, and then eventually the offspring will become a butterfly, and then they'll continue the journey. They'll go to maybe the mid-Atlantic states, start the process all over again. The monarch will lay their eggs on the milkweed. The monarch butterfly dies, and the offspring continues the journey to finally they come up to, New York and southern Canada. So it's really the monarchs that we see here are about the third, fourth, or fifth generation of the monarch that left the year before. So I always find that's kind of interesting, and it's critical that they have milkweed to lay their eggs on, because the monarch butterfly will only lay their eggs on a milkweed, and the caterpillar that emerges will only eat milkweed plant. So if there's no milkweed, there's no monarch butterfly. So that's why it's real important that there's milkweed along the whole journey on the way back up, so that the monarchs continually can lay their eggs and produce offspring and continue that journey up. And one of the things that is important for the monarch too is that the milkweed actually has a toxin in it. So animals don't like to eat the milkweed, but the monarch butterfly has developed like an immunity to that toxin. And in fact, they store it in their body. So therefore, it deters predators, because if somebody like a predator ate a monarch butterfly, it would taste bad and they wouldn't want to eat it. So that toxin is actually beneficial to the monarch as well. So that's why, again, the milkweed is a critical plant for the monarch butterfly to survive. So that's the little monarch journey. So what are some of the things we can do to help the monarch, and really all pollinators? So I kind of branching it back out now to really all pollinators. And there's a couple, the simplest thing we can do is plant flowers, shrubs, and trees that attract pollinators. So pretty much anything you plant that's flowering at some point is going to attract a pollinator. Not all pollinators go to all flowers. Honeybees will go to some, but not others, and bats will go to some, but not others. So, but at some point, some pollinator will go to that plant. So that's one of the easiest things we can do. The other thing we can do is let natural grasses grow without cutting. And this is especially true of milkweed, like along ditches and along edges of field edges, right-of-ways, because, as I just said, the monarch has to lay their eggs on the milkweed. So it's kind of important to try to keep all the milkweed growing if we can. Now, I know I say let natural plants grow, but I do know that there's also concern about ticks being in high, tall grasses and stuff like that. So you have to balance, I guess what you cut, what you don't cut with your own personal safety. Another thing we can do is leave more time lapse between lawn mowing, so grasses have a chance to flower and provide a source of pollen and nectar for the pollinators. Again, that you may not be, want to leave your lawns grow a little bit higher, but it does help some pollinators as well with if not the nectar, also the pollen if the grasses do flower. Another thing we can do is avoid pesticide and herbicide use. Again, some people don't, want to have weeds or whatever, so they use herbicides, pesticides. And I would just say if we did that, it'd be better for the most part to try to apply them late in the evening, because most pollinators are done foraging, when it gets dark. There's exception like bats, for example, they forage at night, but other pollinators, bees and butterflies and wasps, and they forage in the daytime, so they're done pollinating. So if we can, maybe spray the plants at dusk versus, during the middle of the day, that will help pollinators too. And then another thing we can do is consider leaving plants in the garden to overwinter without cleaning in the fall. And this is, again, it provides a habitat for an overwinter nesting place for certain pollinators, like it might be some bumblebees or different types of bees or even wasps that would use those plants to burrow into and lay their eggs and have a nesting spot for the winter. Again, I know that if you leave that stuff there, it also maybe could attract mice and things like that. So again, there's a balance. I know there's a balance, but if you do that, it's a good idea then to leave those plants to later in the spring after the pollinators emerge, because you wouldn't want to have these pollinators come and use your garden, lay their eggs, and then throw them away like in February or something like that, clean up your garden. They don't have a chance. So if you do let the plants leave them in the garden, and you want to let them actually emerge from those plants too. So those are just a few simple things we can do to help pollinators. there's a lot on the web you can do. You can look at the EPA, DEC website, National Wildlife Foundation websites, and just type in pollinators, and there's a ton of information on pollinators. But really, some of the simplest things to do is try to, again, avoid pesticides and plant things that pollinators like. And some pollinators, just as another bit of information, are protected by law under the Threatened and Endangered Species Act. So, for example, like bats, we have the Indiana bat and the northern long-eared bat here in central New York, and they're protected. They're in threatened and/or endangered species. So you can't really disturb their nest. You can't harass them, for example, by making loud noises by their nest or their roosting tree, things like that. So some pollinators are actually protected by law because their numbers are in such decline. And the Fish and Wildlife Service is actually looking at doing the same for the monarch butterfly. They haven't made a decision yet. They keep delaying the decision, but they might actually try to, put some protections in for the monarch butterfly. But it'd be really difficult because one of the things they would want to protect is the milkweed, and that would be a little bit hard to do. It really takes a lot of volunteers to make sure that pollinator plants exist for the pollinators to use. So that was about it. Just a little bit about pollinator protection, why it's important, and what some of them are, and some of the little things that we can do to help them along the way. That's all I had.
Yeah, that was great, Phil. I think you should stress the fact that how important pollinators are to mankind. Without them, we're in a world of hurt. All the farmers that I'm familiar with have a beekeeper that comes and keeps bees on their property just for the purpose of pollinating the crops.
Right, yeah.
Pollinated, then we don't get any fruit, and we don't get any fruit, then we have no food, and we have no food, we die. So
right.
Pretty harsh, right? But it's true.
It is true. It is true. Yeah, you're right, Frank. Yep.
Yeah. And my only experience with it was I was working up on Cape Cod, and I met one of the guys that was running a bulldozer actually on the job I was on. And he was a cranberry bog owner. He owned like a 10-acre cranberry bog, and he invited me up to visit the bog and see everything. It was really interesting. And we went down and we're standing at the end of the bog, and he says, just keep your mouth closed when we're standing here, because it was dusk and there were thousands of honeybees coming back. We were standing right in front of the hives that I didn't realize were behind us. They were just coming in like little missiles. Right. It was really cool to see. They were coming off the bog, obviously, with all the flowers. And, by the thousands. So they weren't, they had their mission in mind, but that always struck me as really cool.
Yeah, it is amazing. I know I read a bit about the almond crop in California, and I think like 75, I don't know how many millions of beehives there are in the United States, but like 75% of the beehives go to California to pollinate almonds during the almond season. I think we passed it now. I think it's late fall, but it's just amazing how many honeybees go to California during that short window to pollinate the almonds, and then they truck them other places to pollinate alfalfa up in the Dakotas, blueberries in Maine, obviously oranges in Florida, and they just keep trucking them around to where the next pollinator crop is. It's but you're right,
they're in trouble too, right?
They are. That's it. They're in decline for a number of reasons. Exactly. A lot of it's habitat.
Yeah. Well, do we have any sign of the monarchs making any improvements that you've read up on?
I think the trend is unfortunately in decline, and there's actually two populations of monarchs. There's an eastern population, which is the bulk of, from I'll say what we see from like Texas to the east, and then there's a smaller population, a very, very small population that's west of the Rockies in California, and but I think the trend is on both of them that it's a little bit of decline. And when I was reading about it, I didn't realize about the trees in Mexico, but just a few dozen trees makes a big difference for the monarchs. There's so many cluster on each individual tree. that just did a little bit of illegal logging. I was expecting to read about, acres and acres, but they were talking of dozens of trees made a difference for the monarch. But then, again, the whole route up, it's, you get the fragmented landscape too, where it's hard for them to forage and stuff, because it's where probably once they forage is now a development or something like that,
Right.
and so there's a lot of factors. It's hard to pinpoint, exactly one thing. It's like everything, every problem is always usually multiple causes, not just one easy answer. But there's things, if everybody does a little tiny part, it makes a big difference.
Or just like all the trees we planted this spring,
Exactly.
500 trees.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, thanks again for that, Phil. That was great.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
We'll just run through the items on my agenda real quick, and then I believe we'll just adjourn because of the lack of attendance tonight. Just wanted to mention the solar overlay district. I believe the town has received one application for a solar overlay, an application, I should just say. I spoke with Stan earlier, and he gave me a brief update on the tower inventory. They are still a work in progress with he and Christmas. They have reached out to everyone, as we've mentioned at previous meetings in February. Several letters were sent out, and we have now heard back from, I believe, and we can wait for Stan to chime in next time, but I believe 2 companies have gotten back to us. And I believe Stan said there are 8 parcels in the town overlay district for the towers. Up in Sevier, I'd have to look at the information, but we'll let Stan report on that next time. Like Phil's environmental topic this week was the pollinators. Martha will speak next time, and I believe it's related to fossil fuel. But don't quote me on that one either, because waiting to hear back from Martha on that.
You might want to have Phil repeat his too,
Yeah,
for a bigger audience, since there's literally him and one other participant on the Zoom.
okay, yeah,
4 of us that have heard this.
I would love to. Right.
So we might want to bump Martha another month, just a reminder. You should
Sure.
mention that.
Yep. And let me see. We need some topics for next meeting. I believe there is one subdivision application in to the town right now that I believe they would look to the ECC to review that as well.
Okay.
It's on Henneberry Road.
Yes.
And our next meeting will be the 19th of August, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
you're going to get it right this month.
I believe so, right? That is the 3rd Thursday of the month.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so last month I said it was the 22nd, which was today, because the first last month was a Thursday. And that kind of threw me for a loop, so. I'm glad we did it the 22nd, though. It would have been kind of quick to go last Thursday, but at any rate, we are not going virtual anymore, so we will be meeting here next month on the 19th again of August.
Just to clarify, we're not only going virtual. We'll still provide a virtual
We will provide it, right,
forum for
the public.
the public, but we have to be present here.
The members need to
Just so
be,
people know, we're still gonna video record.
and the public can come here as well?
Yes,
Okay. Mask or no mask required?
if you're not vaccinated, mask.
We encourage mask if you're not vaccinated.
That's, right now, that's been the standard provided.
Standard, whatever the. state
I
is.
follow whatever rules are told, and
Okay,
I'm the enforcer.
so
Mhm.
short meeting, but
Yeah.
Phil made it
Thanks,
enjoyable.
Phil.
So,
Well,
will-
good. It was a good trial run. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah,
all right. So we will see everyone next time.
okay.
Sounds good. Thank you both.
All right,
Adjourned.
good night. Meeting's adjourned. Mike seconded, so we're good.